The first team we're going to call up now is Team Presec Boys from Presbyterian Boys Secondary School, Ghana. Give them a hand, guys.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. We are Team Presec Boys from Presbyterian Boys Secondary School, Ghana. I'm Darrell, Kwei, the leader and statistician.
I'm Gerrald Benson, business acumen.
And I'm Paddy, the consultant.
Prioritization of scenarios. We prioritize the scenarios on the basis of urgency and ease of control. Thus, we believe strategy and cost optimization, e-mobility, MEB platform, driverless technology, and Navistar acquisition should be the order of presentation. Thank you. Strategy and cost optimization. The first problem that we identified is whether VW agent should decide to fully centralize fully centralized finance, human resources, and information technology under the services executive. But it appears that some problems have arisen.
Okay, so for the problems identified, the first is deciding to fully centralize under the services executive. A new executive has been brought into the group, and he seems not to have as much experience on a board, but has a very favorable track record. So the question here is centralizing under his authority. Is it a good option, yes or no? Second problem is how to handle the redundant executives still in the group. That is, executives who are not fully needed by the group, but are still being paid by the group for their services. Currently, the company has cut down their salaries and relocated a few of them, and it's not proving very beneficial on their part. Third problem, methods of regulation of management responsibilities. Some of the managers are taking certain decisions on their own, which do not seem to benefit the group in many ways. And finally, training and communication procedures. The group has brought in new procedures they want to instill, and the managers seem to not have adequate information on these procedures and how to handle them. Therefore, they're not being implemented as they should. For our recommendations, we firstly recommend partial centralization under the services executive. I believe that we should note that this is a person who has now come into the group and has relatively less experience considering being part of a board. He has a favorable track record, yes, but then to put all these segments behind him all at once, we believe is not favorable. So we've proposed that they centralize certain, only a few segments under his authority and then track his record, maybe within 1 or 2 financial years before taking a final decision on what to do with it. Next, relocation of redundant employees to emerging markets. This handles the problem of proper handling of redundant executives. We recommend that they relocate these redundant employees to key emerging markets. Now, you must keep in mind that these are employees who have experience, expertise, and some loyalty to the group. To let them go will not be a very beneficial decision. So we suggest they are relocated to key emerging markets and their salaries not cut down so much such that it reduces loyalty, but makes them feel like a part of the group, a very solid part of the group. Next, tighten conditions regarding extension of authorities. Under certain circumstances, the managers are allowed to take certain decisions on their own, such as HR, that is employing others to work for the group. And we must keep in mind that the group currently does not need certain employees. So we suggest they tighten conditions regarding the extension of authorities by these managers to limit what they can and cannot do. Finally, training should be more practical. The training was done by email, which is not as good because the managers will not be able to communicate it very well to their subjects.
To the next issue we prioritize. The e-mobility strategy. A VW agent has an advantage in the e-mobility strategy such that they have 0 recalls per 1,000 e-cars, while the others ranged from 500 to about 3,000 per 1,000 cars. Right, so the first problem we identified is the traffic in charging systems in the near future. Is there traffic in charging systems in the near future? You could see that the number of e-cars that will be produced in the near future will be a lot. But how many charging systems will we have? Or how many charging stations will we have in the future? So there you see that the ratio of charging stations to the ratio of charging stations to e-cars in the future will be low, which will cause traffic in the charging systems in the near future. The second problem we identify is the limited sources of electricity. This problem is arising out of the fact that it's not all countries that is developed. Some countries are trying to develop. So less developed countries will not have that much electricity, and they will be left behind in e-car sales. Due to the fact that once the e-vehicles die out of battery, they will be rendered useless. The third problem is deciding the best recall strategy. That should the need arise. First of all, there is regulation that VW aging should at least recall 400,000 vehicles. But we made provision. There was a forecast about the recall, voluntary partial recall, 750 million, and then voluntary partial recall, 750 million, voluntary universal recall, which we didn't add here, that was 1 billion euros, and then compensation that was to consumers that we would recall, that's 250. We firstly recommend the creation of VW exclusive charging points. That is, the group should create their own charging system, charging stations, which will increase their sales of e-cars. High investment into alternative sources of energy. That is, they can make solar electric cars to deal with the charging issues, and the creation of reserves or provisions in case of partial recall, as well as compensations.
Next is the MEB platform. A proposal has been brought forward by BYD for a sort of a collaboration between Volkswagen and BYD to create an MEB vehicle that is expected to boost sales. However, VW cannot engage in China. So the questions here is whether or not to deal with BYD, and finally, how to grow its EV Chinese market share. So we firstly recommend they accept the alliance with BYD. They're trying to take down Tesla as their main objective, so going with a rival will be the best option here. And finally, center sales efforts in USA, Germany, and other geographic regions to increase popularity, and then also produce in China other EV models within China, apart from the agreed one. Next. Driverless technology. VW has decided to go into e-cars, but the dream doesn't end there. They further aim to go into production of self-driving cars. Now, in a case where you are in a self-driving car, what's the first question you ask yourself? Am I safe? The first problem we've identified is ensuring the consumers trust in VW driverless cars, and then ensuring VW makes the best of the deal with Ford. We firstly recommend that VW emphasize efforts on systems such as braking and steering problems to give customers the confidence they need while in their electric cars. And finally, make known VW's driverless vehicle intentions to ensure maximization of the benefits of the deal. So they are to make people aware of what they plan to do and the measures they are putting in place to ensure their safety.
Navistar acquisition. Right, VW AG wants to acquire Navistar, but the problem is, how do they fund this cost? There are two solutions to that, either by cash offer or share-for-share exchange. But we recommend the cash offer instead of share-for-share, because what the percentage VW shareholders will gain in that Navistar acquisition will be 52%. Out of that synergies that they will incur, they will incur a synergy of 9 billion euros if they merge. And then share-for-share exchange, they will only gain 27%, while Navistar shareholders will gain 225% of the acquisition. So we recommend that the group fund the cost by cash offer.
Some of our recommendations are for strategy and cost optimization. They should centralize partially and relocate managers. For
MEB platform, engage with BYD and center efforts in the most developed markets to ensure they make the most out of the deal, since they can't deal in China, but the rest of the world is open to them.
And with e-mobility, to create their own charging points, investigate into alternative sources of energy, and then create reserves for recalls
For
in
driverless
case the need
technology-
arise.
For driverless technology, emphasize on the safety of their self-driving cars to give customers a sense of assurance while in the cars and make known their plans to go into driverless cars.
And then the Navistar acquisition, we should fund the cost by cash offer. Thank you.
Considering that you only had 3 hours to go through this whole case study and come up with that, I must say that is very impressive, very well done for withstanding the pressure, and I think just for your composure standing there on stage. So I've noticed that you have not said anything about the ethical dilemma that faces the companies in as far as yes, the whole case is concerned. If you can just talk to us about that. What were your thoughts?
Apologies for that. So the main ethical dilemma we noticed was within strategy and cost optimization. That is that we believe that the group has a certain responsibility to her executives. And where they appear redundant, the group must search for other areas where they can be more productive, instead of simply relocating them and cutting down their salaries and making them feel generally unwanted and not useful in the business. It causes them to lose loyalty for the business.
Therefore, we believe that it's better for them to use their experience profitably. They should be relocated to emerging markets.
Your presentation was really good. Well done. It's really good. Just a couple of questions. I want to understand, because I'm very intrigued by your prioritization of the issues. And I want to know kind of how you went about. Tell me a little bit about the process in doing that, and then I have one more question after that.
Okay, we prioritize the scenarios because of urgency. Their strategy and cost optimization. Managers were recruiting employees without going through the requisite procedures.
And it's happening right now.
And so we believe that that issue should be resolved immediately before e-mobility, then followed by MEB platforms.
See, these are future issues. The e-mobility, it's both current and future. As in the carcinogenic metal they used in the production of their charging system. That is the risk of fire. The risk of fire that would be borne by the customers driving the e-vehicles. So how to deal with that? And then for the future, that's the charging points. So e-mobility strategy.
So to add to it, basically we did it according to how domestic the problem is. What can be handled easiest and faster? The Navistar acquisition is a big thing, so we put it at the end such that the company is in a firm position to take care of it. So the most domestic problem was handled first. Strategy and cost optimization before e-mobility, MEB platform, driverless technology, and the Navistar acquisition finally.
I think your prioritization is really logical, and I really like how you thought it through. I also really liked your creative problem solving. I think, especially around the executives and moving them, I think that sort of application it's good. What I just want to understand, this is not clear to me. Please go to the slide around your e-mobility strategy. So what you're saying to me is we need to partially recall the vehicles, or please just unpack that one a little bit for me around so not around the charging points or anything else, around the actual recall, the carcinogens, how are we handling that, and the compensation, and please unpack, thanks.
Okay, so these were forecasts made by the forecast we were given. So the compensation is in case we need to recall cars that have been bought by consumers. That is, whether maybe the carcinogenic metal would affect them or not. So the amount was 250 million euros, right? So these are reserves we would make for the forecast. That's what the forecast presented. So we are reserving this amount in case they happen.
I understand that you are reserving that amount,
Right.
but are you pressing the button to recall, or are you just going to wait and see what happens?
We are just going to wait and see what happens.
Wait till the situation is urgent, because right now VW has other things you need to tend to. But when this becomes a situation that has to be addressed, we want to make sure that VW has the funds to do it and do it immediately.
Because not all expectations are expected to happen.
Thank you for your presentation. Can you please talk us through the problems that you anticipate with relocating some of the executives to emerging markets? And if you can also, maybe answer this question first.
Okay, the first problem that could occur is unwillingness to be relocated by the managers. If they feel like they're being sort of demoted, especially since their salary may reduce slightly, they may feel like they're being demoted from their senior level. That could pose a problem. So that's one of the problems. That's why we suggest that if a reduction must be made, it must be made very slightly that the loyalty of the executive is not affected. If that makes sense.
And then in terms of the charging of vehicles in the future, please talk us through what you anticipate the number of, or how the rollout will be handled in terms of number of charging stations and how that would work, and if you've got any estimates in terms of how much the rollout would cost.
Well, estimates. Actually, I don't know, I can't really estimate the value exactly, but I can make a ratio. That the ratio will be relatively low. That is maybe comparing the number of charging points to e-cars, it will be like 5 is to maybe 1,000.
That's fine. And then lastly, you are also proposing that we create VW exclusive charging points. How do you plan to handle that, considering that you're recommending to the board that we go into a partnership with BYD?
Yeah. Please, I didn't get the question. Well, can you repeat the question?
One of the recommendations you have got on the e-mobility slide now is that we create VW exclusive charging points.
Yes.
My question is, how do you plan to navigate that, given the fact that you're also proposing that we work with BYD going forward?
So the contract with BYD is sort of a collaboration to use the same system to produce a car. So these charging points will be specifically for VW branded cars, but there can be some exceptions, such as this car created by the merger. So it will be made certain that for these charging stations, only VW-made e-cars can be charged over there to limit the stress VW customers go through to charge their cars. But then for groups such as for mergers, like the one VW is engaging in, that can be put as an exception, so that that car could be used in these charging points.
Hi, I've got a couple of questions I want to ask, so I'm going to ask you to keep your answers brief. On this slide here, can you tell us what was the decisive factor that made you choose that option as opposed to, for example, a total recall of vehicles? What's your...
To choose which option?
Yeah, why did you choose that and not a total recall of the vehicles? What was your deciding factor?
A total recall of the vehicles.
Cost. Yes.
Why we didn't choose the voluntary universal recall instead of why we chose voluntary partial recall instead of universal voluntary universal recall. Actually, we don't expect a lot of, because of their zero recall so far. We don't expect their zero recall track record. We don't expect a huge number of recalls. So we instead provided for the voluntary partial recall, which is 750.
Okay, that's great. The second is to the BYD deal in China. Again, can you tell me what made you decide to go with the deal with China as opposed to you have already 2 factories there? You chose to go and focus in other emerging markets. Again, what was your deciding factor choosing that as opposed to a different choice?
Okay. We believe that engaging with one of Tesla's biggest competitors could give an edge such that certain costs will be saved, in that the group doesn't bear all the costs involved in creating this new car. And it will help effectively compete with Tesla.
What did you consider in making that decision? What different considerations did you take into account?
The NP.
That's your only consideration?
Yes. And then the projected sales, and then that's the appendix they give us.
Sorry, I got that. I'm just trying to switch it off for feedback.
Okay.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.